In the fog-shrouded halls of Greystone Manor, a single telegram sparks a deadly mystery. Lady Margaret Vane is found strangled, her secret past in Vienna threatening to unravel a family's honour. Hercule Poirot, with his razor-sharp mind, uncovers a web of betrayal. Clara's hidden warning, Roger's desperate debts, a shadowy night visitor, and a doctor's chilling deception. As the truth emerges from the ashes of a burned message, one question haunts. Who sent the last telegram, and who paid the ultimate price? The little grey cells will reveal all. Chapter 1. The Curious Message. The morning light filtered through the heavy drapes of Hercule Poirot's London flat, casting a soft glow on the polished mahogany table where he sat, savouring his customary tisane. The aroma of chamomile and mint filled the air, a ritual as precise as the man himself. His small, fastidious hands adjusted the cup's position on its saucer, ensuring perfect alignment. Across from him, Captain Arthur Hastings, his loyal friend and occasional confidant, lounged in an armchair, his broad shoulders relaxed, but his brow creased as he scanned the pages of the Times. The year was 1939, and the headlines screamed of unrest in Europe, a distant storm that seemed to inch closer with each passing day. "Poirot," Hastings said, lowering the newspaper with a rustle. "It's a queer thing, isn't it? How the telegram's fading away. All this talk of telephones and wireless, soon there'll be no place for a good old wire." Poirot's moustache, immaculately groomed, quivered slightly as he set down his cup. His grey eyes, sharp and inquisitive, met Hastings' gaze. "Mon ami, the telegram is a masterpiece of economy. It demands clarity, precision, qualities the modern world too often discards. Yet I confess, even the most elegant methods must bow to progress." Before Hastings could reply, a sharp rap echoed through the flat. Poirot's valet, George, appeared moments later, his demeanour as impeccable as his employer's. "A telegram, sir," he announced, presenting a yellow envelope on a silver tray. Poirot's fingers, deft and deliberate, slit open the envelope. His eyes scanned the brief message, and a spark of interest flickered across his composed features. "Listen, Hastings," he said, his voice tinged with the faintest excitement. "It reads, 'Come at once. Murder at Greystone Manor. Your expertise required. Sir Henry Vane.'" Hastings leaned forward, his eyes widening. "Murder, Poirot, and by telegram, no less. That's a bit old-fashioned for a crime, isn't it?" "Old-fashioned? Perhaps," Poirot mused, tapping the paper against his chin. "But deliberate. This Sir Henry Vane, he chooses his words with care. He does not telephone. He does not write a letter. He sends a telegram, a cry for help that cannot be ignored. We must go, Hastings. Go to Devonshire." Hastings hesitated, glancing at the newspaper's grim headlines. "With all this talk of war, is it wise to dash off?" Poirot rose, smoothing his waistcoat with a practised hand. "War, mon ami, is a storm that gathers. Murder, however, is a storm that has struck. The little grey cells, they demand action. Pack your bag, Hastings. We depart for Greystone Manor within the hour." As they prepared, Poirot's mind was already at work, parsing the telegram's sparse words. Sir Henry Vane, a name faintly familiar from diplomatic circles, a man of influence now retired to the countryside. Why a telegram? Why not the police alone? The urgency, the choice of medium, it suggested a matter of delicacy, a puzzle worthy of Hercule Poirot's unique talents. He adjusted his hat in the mirror, his reflection as precise as his thoughts, and murmured, "The last telegram, perhaps, but not the last mystery." Chapter 2. Arrival at Greystone Manor. The train from London to Devonshire sliced through the autumn countryside, its rhythmic clatter a counterpoint to the sombre mood within the first-class compartment. Hercule Poirot sat by the window, his gloved hands folded neatly over his cane, his sharp grey eyes absorbing the fleeting vistas of golden fields and mist-shrouded hills. Beside him, Captain Arthur Hastings fidgeted, his fingers drumming on the armrest as he glanced at the telegram once more, its stark words etched in his mind. Come at once. Murder at Greystone Manor. Your expertise required. Sir Henry Vane. Poirot, Hastings ventured, breaking the silence. What do you make of this Sir Henry Vane? Diplomat, wasn't he? Retired to some grand estate, no doubt, but why call for you? Surely the local police have matters in hand. Poirot's moustache twitched, a subtle sign of amusement or irritation. Hastings could never quite tell. Mon ami, Sir Henry is a man of discretion, a former servant of the Crown. If he summons Hercule Poirot, it is because the police, capable though they may be, lack the finesse to unravel a knot most particular. This murder, it is not a simple affair of violence. The telegram suggests urgency, yes, but also secrecy. We shall see. The train slowed, and soon they disembarked at a small windswept station, where a chauffeur in a dark overcoat awaited them. Monsieur Poirot, Captain Hastings, the man said, touching his cap. I'm Jenkins, from Greystone Manor. Sir Henry's expecting you. The drive to the manor was a silent one, the Rolls-Royce gliding along narrow lanes bordered by ancient hedgerows. Greystone Manor emerged from the mist like a fortress of the past, its grey stone walls rising sternly against the rolling Devon hills. Ivy clung to its facade, and tall mullioned windows glinted dully in the fading light. The air carried the scent of damp earth and impending rain, and Hastings shivered, pulling his coat tighter. Imposing, is it not? Poirot remarked, his eyes scanning the manor's turrets and gables. A house such as this holds many secrets, Hastings. We must tread carefully. They were ushered through a heavy oak door into a vast hall, where a chandelier cast flickering shadows on portraits of stern-faced ancestors. Sir Henry Vane awaited them in the drawing-room, a high-ceilinged chamber furnished with faded elegance, velvet drapes, a grand fireplace, and a scattering of antique chairs. Sir Henry, a man in his late 60s, stood by the hearth, his silver hair dishevelled, his patrician features drawn with grief. His hands clasped behind his back trembled slightly as he turned to greet them. Monsieur Poirot, Captain Hastings, thank you for coming, he said, his voice low and strained. I scarcely know where to begin. My wife, Margaret, Lady Margaret, was found dead this morning in the library, strangled, they say, with her own silk scarf. His voice broke, and he gestured to a decanter of brandy on a sideboard. Would you care for a drink? Poirot declined with a polite wave, his eyes already roaming the room, taking in every detail, the scuffed Persian rug, the faint smell of beeswax polish, the ticking of a grandfather clock. My condolences, Sir Henry, he said softly, but I must ask you to recount the events precisely. When was Lady Margaret discovered, and by whom? Sir Henry sank into a chair, his hands gripping the armrests. It was Mrs. Finch, our housekeeper, who found her. Around 7 this morning. Margaret often rose early to read in the library. When Mrs. Finch brought her tea, she saw her there, lifeless. He paused, swallowing hard. The police came quickly, Inspector Grayson from the local constabulary. He's been poking about, but he's out of his depth. That's why I sent for you. Hastings, standing by a window overlooking the misty gardens, frowned. Strangled with a scarf, you say? That's a personal sort of crime, isn't it, Poirot? Not a robbery gone wrong. Précisément, Poirot murmured, his gaze fixed on Sir Henry. And the telegram, Sir Henry. Why choose such a method to summon me? Sir Henry's eyes flickered with unease. Margaret received a telegram herself yesterday afternoon. It upset her terribly. She wouldn't let me read it. Burned it in the library fireplace before I could see. But I heard her muttering something about the past and danger. I thought, perhaps you, with your reputation, could make sense of it. Poirot's expression sharpened, like a hound catching a scent. A telegram. Burned. Most intriguing. We must see this library at once. But first, tell me, who resides in this house?" Sir Henry rose, leading them toward the library as he spoke. "There's my sister-in-law, Clara Hammond, Margaret's younger sister. She's a widow, sharp as a tack, but prone to bitterness. Her son, Roger, lives here too, a restless sort, always chasing some scheme or another. Mrs. Finch, our housekeeper, has been with us for years, and Dr. Paul Kendrick, our physician, often visits. He was here last night, checking on Margaret's nerves." They entered the library, a cavernous room lined with towering bookshelves, their leather-bound volumes exuding the musty scent of age. A massive oak desk dominated one end, its surface littered with papers and a silver inkstand. A single armchair lay overturned near the fireplace, its cushion askew. The hearth was cold, but a faint trace of ash lingered, hinting at the burned telegram. The air held a lingering note of lavender, Lady Margaret's perfume, perhaps. Poirot moved with the precision of a watchmaker, his eyes darting from the desk to the floor, then to the windows, which were firmly latched. He knelt by the fireplace, extracting a charred scrap of paper with a pair of tweezers. The fragment bore only 3 words. "Truth will out." Hastings peered over his shoulder. "Good Lord, Poirot, that sounds like a threat. But who sent it? And why burn it?" Poirot straightened, slipping the fragment into an envelope. "The telegram was a warning, Hastings. But to whom? Lady Margaret? Or another? We must learn who else was in this room last night." Sir Henry summoned the household, and one by one they filed into the library, their faces a tableau of grief, suspicion, and unease. Clara Hammond, a tall woman with angular features and piercing blue eyes, stood rigidly, her black dress accentuating her pallor. Her son, Roger, a lanky young man in his late 20s, slouched against a bookshelf, his hands thrust into his pockets, his expression sullen. Mrs. Finch, the housekeeper, hovered near the door, her grey hair pinned tightly, her fingers twisting a handkerchief. Dr. Paul Kendrick, a man of middle age with a calm, almost detached demeanour, leaned against the desk, his slight limp noticeable as he shifted his weight. Poirot addressed them with his usual courtesy, though his tone carried an edge of authority. "Mesdames et messieurs, a tragedy has occurred. Lady Margaret was murdered here, in this room, and I, Hercule Poirot, will uncover the truth. I ask each of you, when did you last see her, and what was her state of mind?" Clara spoke first, her voice crisp. "I saw Margaret yesterday evening around 10. We spoke briefly in the drawing room. She seemed agitated, but she wouldn't say why. I assumed it was her nerves. She was always delicate." Roger shifted, his eyes avoiding Poirot's. "I saw her after that, about 11, here in the library. She was reading, or pretending to. We had words. She didn't approve of my plans to invest in a new venture, but I left her here, alive." Mrs. Finch's voice trembled. "I brought her tea at 11:30, as I always do. She was sitting there." She pointed to the overturned chair. "And she looked frightened, sir, like she'd seen a ghost." I didn't stay long. Dr. Kendrick cleared his throat, his tone measured. "I visited at midnight to check on her health. Margaret had been complaining of sleeplessness. She was alive when I left, though she seemed preoccupied." Poirot's eyes moved from one face to another, as if reading a map of hidden truths. "And this telegram, the one Lady Margaret received, did any of you see it?" A chorus of denials followed, though Clara's gaze faltered, and Roger's fingers twitched in his pockets. Mrs. Finch shook her head vigorously, and Kendrick merely raised an eyebrow, as if the question were beneath him. "Very well," Poirot said, clasping his hands behind his back. "I shall require access to Lady Margaret's papers, her correspondence, anything that may shed light on this telegram. Sir Henry, you will permit this?" "Of course," Sir Henry replied, his voice hollow. "Anything to find her killer." As the household dispersed, Poirot lingered in the library, his fingers brushing the edge of the desk. "Hastings," he said softly, "this is no ordinary murder. The telegram, the scarf, the overturned chair, they tell a story of fear and betrayal. Someone in this house knows more than they admit." Hastings nodded, his mind racing. "That Kendrick fellow, he's too calm, don't you think? And that limp of his, could he have been sneaking about last night?" Poirot smiled faintly, his eyes gleaming with purpose. "Calmness, mon ami, can be a mask, but a limp is merely a clue. We must reconstruct the hours before her death. The truth lies in the details. The little grey cells, they will not fail us." He moved to the desk, examining a stack of letters and a locked diary, its leather cover embossed with Lady Margaret's initials. "This," he said, holding it up, "may hold the key to her fears. But first, we must learn who sent that telegram and why it drove her to such distress." The afternoon waned, and the manor seemed to close in around them, its shadows lengthening as the rain began to fall. Poirot stood by the window, watching the droplets streak the glass, his mind already piecing together the fragments of a puzzle that was far from complete. Chapter 3. The Scene of the Crime. The library of Greystone Manor, with its towering shelves and heavy air, seemed to hold its breath as Hercule Poirot stood at its centre, his small, precise figure a stark contrast to the room's sombre grandeur. The late afternoon light filtered through the tall windows, casting long shadows across the oak floorboards, where the overturned armchair lay like a silent witness to the tragedy. Captain Arthur Hastings stood near the door, his hands clasped behind his back, his eyes darting between Poirot and the fireplace, where the charred fragment of the telegram had been found. The faint scent of lavender lingered, a ghostly trace of Lady Margaret Vane, whose life had been so brutally extinguished in this very room. Poirot moved with deliberate care, his polished shoes silent on the rug as he circled the scene. The desk, cluttered with papers and a silver inkstand, bore signs of disturbance. A few sheets had slipped to the floor, their edges curling as if touched by hurried hands. The fireplace, cold now, held a pile of ash and the fragment Poirot had retrieved. "Truth will out," rested in his pocket, a tantalizing clue to a motive yet unclear. He paused by the armchair, noting its angle, the way its cushion had been crushed, as if someone had sat heavily or struggled there. "Hastings," Poirot said, his voice low but resonant, "observe the room. It is not merely a place of books and learning. It is a stage, and upon it, a drama has unfolded. The question is, what role did each player take?" Hastings frowned, stepping closer. "It's a grim stage, Poirot. Strangled with her own scarf, you say, Sir Henry told us. That's a cold-blooded act. But this telegram business, why burn it? If it was a threat, wouldn't she have kept it to show someone?" Poirot's eyes gleamed, his moustache twitching slightly. "Précisément, mon ami. The burning of the telegram suggests fear, not of the message itself perhaps, but of its discovery by another. Lady Margaret wished to protect something, or someone. We must learn what." He knelt by the fireplace, sifting through the ash with a small brass poker. A few more fragments emerged, but they were illegible, reduced to brittle flakes. Rising, he turned his attention to the desk, where a blotter bore faint impressions of hurried writing. He tilted his head, studying the surface, then lifted a letter opener to examine it under the light. No blood, no marks, only the gleam of polished silver. "Poirot," Hastings ventured, "do you think the killer was still here when Mrs. Finch brought the tea? She said Lady Margaret looked frightened. Perhaps the telegram arrived just before, and the killer came soon after." "A possibility," Poirot conceded, moving to the windows. He tested each latch, finding them secure, the heavy drapes undisturbed. But the windows, they are locked from within. No sign of forced entry. The murderer, therefore, was either known to Lady Margaret or already in the house. Hastings shivered glancing at the door. That points to the household, doesn't it? Clara, Roger, Mrs. Finch, or even that Dr. Kendrick. He was here late after all. Poirot did not respond immediately. Instead, he crossed to a small side table where a crystal decanter of sherry sat beside a single glass, half filled. He sniffed the liquid, his expression unreadable. Curious, he murmured. Lady Margaret was not drinking alone, perhaps, yet only one glass remains. He summoned Sir Henry, who appeared promptly, his face etched with exhaustion. "Monsieur Poirot, have you found something?" he asked, his voice tinged with hope and dread. "Perhaps," Poirot replied, gesturing to the sherry glass. "Did your wife often drink sherry in the library?" Sir Henry shook his head. "Rarely. Margaret preferred tea in the evenings." She said alcohol clouded her thoughts. Poirot nodded, filing the detail away. "And the papers on the desk, were they always so disordered?" Sir Henry frowned, approaching the desk. "No, she was meticulous. Those papers, they look as if someone rifled through them." "Merci," Poirot said, dismissing him gently. As Sir Henry left, Poirot turned to Hastings. "The disorder, the sherry, the telegram, these are not accidents. They are threads in a tapestry of motive. We must question the household again, but with care. The truth hides behind their words." The interviews resumed in the drawing room, where the household gathered under the watchful eyes of ancestral portraits. Clara Hammond sat erect, her hands folded tightly in her lap, her blue eyes cold and assessing. Roger leaned against the mantel, his restlessness palpable, his fingers tapping a nervous rhythm. Mrs. Finch stood by the door, her handkerchief now a crumpled knot, while Dr. Kendrick occupied a chair near the window, his calm demeanour unshaken, though his slight limp drew Poirot's attention as he adjusted his position. Poirot began with Clara. "Madame Hammond, you said you spoke to your sister at 10. Where precisely? And what was the nature of your conversation?" Clara's lips tightened. "In the hall, near the staircase. It was brief. She was on her way to the library. She mentioned a letter she'd received. Not the telegram, but she wouldn't elaborate. I thought it was some trivial worry. Margaret was always fretting over something." Poirot's gaze was unwavering. "A letter, you say? Yet Sir Henry mentioned only the telegram. Did you see this letter?" "No," Clara snapped, then softened her tone. "She didn't show it to me. I assumed it was personal." Turning to Roger, Poirot's voice was deceptively mild. "Monsieur Hammond, you quarrelled with your mother last night. Over what, précisément?" Roger flushed, his hands clenching. "Money, if you must know. I've had some setbacks. A business venture that didn't pan out. I asked her for a loan, and she refused. Said I needed to stand on my own. We argued, but I didn't. I left her in the library. Alive, I swear." Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. "And you, Mrs. Finch? You saw Lady Margaret at 11:30. Describe her exactly." The housekeeper's voice quavered. "She was sitting in that chair, sir, the one that's tipped over now. Her hands were shaking, and her eyes, oh, they were wide, like she'd heard bad news. I asked if she was all right, but she just waved me away, said she needed to think." Poirot turned to Dr. Kendrick, his tone sharpening. "And you, doctor, visited at midnight. For what purpose, if Lady Margaret was merely preoccupied?" Kendrick met Poirot's gaze steadily. "She'd been complaining of insomnia for weeks. I prescribed a mild sedative and came to check on her. She was in the library, reading. She seemed distracted, yes, but not alarmed. I advised her to rest and left shortly after." Poirot paced slowly, his cane tapping the floor. 4 accounts, 4 perspectives, yet the truth remains elusive. The telegram, burned. The sherry, untouched by Lady Margaret's habit. The papers disturbed. Someone in this room knows more than they say. Clara's eyes flashed. "Are you accusing us, Monsieur Poirot?" "Not accusing, madame," Poirot replied smoothly. "Merely observing. The little grey cells, They gather the facts, and the facts will lead to the truth. As the household dispersed, Hastings whispered, "Poirot, that sherry glass. It's odd, isn't it? If Margaret didn't drink, who did? And Kendrick's story feels too neat." Poirot smiled faintly, his eyes distant. "The sherry, Hastings, is a clue to a visitor, perhaps. As for Kendrick, his calm is indeed suspicious, but suspicion is not proof. We must search further. Lady Margaret's papers, her habits, her fears. The telegram is the key, and I, Hercule Poirot, will unlock its secret." He moved back to the library, his steps purposeful, as the rain began to patter against the windows, sealing Greystone Manor in a cocoon of mystery. Chapter 4. The Shadow of Secrets. The rain had settled into a steady drizzle, cloaking Greystone Manor in a veil of grey that seemed to deepen the gloom within its walls. Hercule Poirot stood by the drawing-room's grand fireplace, the crackle of fresh logs a faint comfort against the chill of the evening. Captain Arthur Hastings sat in a high-backed chair, his fingers tracing the rim of a teacup, his brow furrowed as he mulled over the day's revelations. The library, with its overturned chair and lingering scent of lavender, haunted his thoughts, and the charred telegram fragment, "Truth will out," loomed like a spectre over the household. Poirot, his small frame immaculate in a tailored suit, turned to face the assembled company. Sir Henry Vane sat near the hearth, his face haggard, his hands clasped tightly, as if to anchor himself against his grief. Clara Hammond perched on a velvet settee, her posture rigid, her sharp eyes darting between Poirot and the others. Roger Hammond slouched by a window, his restless energy barely contained, while Mrs. Finch hovered near the door, her nervous fingers twisting her apron. Dr. Paul Kendrick leaned against a bookcase, his calm demeanour unshaken, though the slight limp in his stance drew Poirot's keen attention. "Mesdames et messieurs," Poirot began, his voice clear and measured, "a crime has been committed, a life taken in the heart of this house. Lady Margaret Vane was not merely murdered, she was silenced. The telegram she received, the one she burned, was a warning, a key to her death. I ask you now, with the utmost clarity, who saw her last, and what did you observe?" Clara spoke first, her tone clipped. "I told you, Monsieur Poirot, I saw Margaret at 10, in the hall. She was upset, muttering about some old matter. I pressed her, but she brushed me off and went to the library." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "An old matter, you say? Did she mention its nature?" Clara hesitated, her fingers tightening on her shawl. "No, she was always private about her worries. I assumed it was her health. She'd been frail lately." Turning to Roger, Poirot's gaze was unrelenting. "And you, Monsieur Hammond, you admitted to a quarrel at 11. What was Lady Margaret doing when you left her?" Roger shifted, his jaw tight. "She was at her desk, scribbling something. I didn't see what. We argued about money. She thought I was reckless. I stormed out, but she was alive, I swear it." Mrs. Finch's voice trembled as she spoke. "I brought her tea at 11:30, as I said. She was in that armchair, staring at the fire. Her hands were clasped so tight her knuckles were white. I asked if she needed anything, but she just shook her head, like she was lost in thought." Poirot turned to Dr. Kendrick, his tone deceptively mild. "And you, Doctor, at midnight, you claim Lady Margaret was reading, distracted but well. Did you notice anything unusual? A paper, a letter, perhaps the telegram itself?" Kendrick's expression remained steady, his voice smooth. "Nothing of the sort. She was reading a book, some poetry, I think. I checked her pulse, advised her to rest, and left. She seemed calm enough, considering her insomnia." Poirot paced slowly, his cane tapping the floor with a rhythmic precision. "4 accounts, yet the truth dances just beyond our grasp. A telegram burned, a sherry glass untouched by its owner, papers scattered on a desk. These are not mere details. They are the threads of a web, and at its centre lies the motive for murder. Sir Henry's voice broke the silence, hoarse with emotion. Monsieur Poirot, what are you suggesting? That one of us, one of my family, did this? Poirot's eyes softened, but only for a moment. I suggest nothing, Sir Henry. I observe, and I, Hercule Poirot, will uncover the truth, no matter where it hides. As the household dispersed, their footsteps echoing in the cavernous hall, Hastings leaned close to Poirot. That Kendrick chap, he's too composed, don't you think? And that limp of his, it's suspicious, isn't it? Could he have been lurking about after midnight? Poirot's moustache twitched with a faint smile. Calmness, mon ami, is often the cloak of guilt, but it is not proof. The limp, yes, it is a detail to consider. But we must look beyond the surface. The telegram, the sherry, the papers, these are the keys. Let us return to the library. The library was darker now, the rain-streaked windows reflecting the flickering glow of a single lamp. Poirot moved to the desk, his fingers brushing the scattered papers. Among them, he found a receipt for a rare book, dated 2 weeks prior, and a note in Lady Margaret's elegant script. Must speak to C about the old matter. He tucked the note into his pocket, his mind racing. Hastings, he said. This note, C, could it be Clara? Or perhaps another? We must learn what old matter tormented Lady Margaret. Hastings frowned, peering at the desk. And that sherry glass, why only one? If she had a visitor, wouldn't there be two? Précisément, Poirot replied, his eyes gleaming. The single glass suggests a visitor who did not drink, or one who removed their own. A careful killer, perhaps. We must search further. He examined the bookshelves, noting a volume of Keats slightly askew, its pages marked with a ribbon. Opening it, he found a pressed flower, a lavender sprig tucked inside. Curious, he murmured. Lavender, like the scent in the room. A sentimental touch, or a clue. The door creaked, and Mrs. Finch appeared, her face pale. Monsieur Poirot, I couldn't help overhearing earlier. There's something I didn't mention. Last night, after I brought the tea, I saw a shadow in the garden. Someone was out there, near the library windows. I didn't get a good look, but it frightened me. Poirot's gaze sharpened. A shadow, you say? Male or female? Tall or short? Mrs. Finch wrung her hands. Tall, I think. Cloaked, moving quickly. I didn't dare go out. Merci, Mrs. Finch, Poirot said, dismissing her gently. As she left, he turned to Hastings. A shadow in the garden, a telegram burned, a note about an old matter. The pieces, they begin to align. We must discover what secret Lady Margaret carried, and who feared its exposure. Hastings nodded, his mind racing. That shadow, could it be Kendrick? His limp might not show in the dark. Or Roger, sneaking about after their row. Poirot's eyes gleamed with purpose. All are possible, Hastings. But the truth lies in the details. The little grey cells, they will not rest until the puzzle is complete. As they left the library, the rain intensified, drumming against the manor's ancient walls. The shadow of secrets loomed larger, and Poirot knew the night would bring more revelations, or more danger. Chapter 5. The Hidden Past. The morning dawned grey and heavy over Greystone Manor, the rain having relented to a damp mist that clung to the windows like a shroud. Hercule Poirot stood in the library, his small, immaculate figure silhouetted against the muted light filtering through the mullioned panes. The room, still bearing the scars of the crime, the overturned armchair, the scattered papers, seemed to pulse with secrets yet untold. Captain Arthur Hastings lingered near the desk, his fingers tracing the edge of a locked diary they had discovered the previous evening, its leather cover embossed with Lady Margaret Vane's initials. The faint scent of lavender now mingled with the must of old books hung in the air, a reminder of the woman whose life had been so abruptly ended. Poirot's grey eyes, sharp as ever, fixed on the diary. This, mon ami, he said, tapping the cover with a gloved finger, is more than a keepsake. It is a window into Lady Margaret's mind, her fears, her secrets. We must open it. Hastings frowned, his practical mind grappling with the ethics of the act. But Poirot, it's locked. Shouldn't we ask Sir Henry first? It feels a bit intrusive. Poirot's moustache twitched with a faint smile. Intrusion, Hastings, is the detective's prerogative when murder is afoot. Sir Henry will understand. The truth, it does not wait for permission. With Sir Henry's reluctant consent, obtained over a tense breakfast in the dining room, Poirot deftly picked the diary's lock using a small tool from his pocket case, a relic of his more adventurous cases. The pages, filled with Lady Margaret's elegant script, revealed a woman of introspection and quiet burdens. Poirot read silently, his expression growing more intent with each turn of the page. Hastings, peering over his shoulder, caught fragments of entries, notes on rare books, mentions of social engagements, and then, buried among the mundane, a passage that made Poirot pause. "Listen, Hastings," he said, his voice low. "An entry from 3 weeks ago. The past stirs again. A letter from an old acquaintance, hinting at that wretched affair in Vienna. I thought it buried, but the truth haunts me. I must protect Henry." Hastings' eyes widened. "Vienna? What affair? Do you think it's connected to the telegram?" "Précisément," Poirot replied, turning to a later entry. "And here, 2 days ago, another message, this time by telegram. The words chill me. I cannot tell Henry. Not yet. The truth will out. But at what cost?" Poirot closed the diary, his mind racing. A scandal, Hastings, from years past. Vienna, a city of diplomacy and secrets. Lady Margaret was entangled in something that threatened her husband's reputation. This telegram, it was not the first warning she received. Hastings rubbed his chin. But what could it be? Sir Henry was a diplomat, perhaps a political indiscretion. And who sent these messages? Poirot paced, his cane tapping rhythmically. "We must learn more of this wretched affair. Let us summon Clara Hammond. As Lady Margaret's sister, she may know of this past." Clara entered the library with her usual rigidity, her black dress accentuating the sharpness of her features. Her blue eyes met Poirot's with a mix of defiance and wariness. "You wish to see me, Monsieur Poirot?" she asked, her voice cool. "Oui, madame," Poirot said, gesturing to a chair. "Your sister's diary speaks of an incident in Vienna many years ago. A scandal, perhaps, that she feared would resurface. What do you know of it?" Clara's face tightened, her hands folding tightly in her lap. "You've been reading her diary? That's hardly proper." Poirot's gaze was unrelenting. "Murder, madam, is hardly proper. The truth must be uncovered. What happened in Vienna?" Clara hesitated, her eyes flicking to the window as if seeking escape in the mist beyond. "It was 20 years ago," she said at last, her voice low. "Margaret was young, impulsive. She was in Vienna with Henry, early in his diplomatic career. She shared sensitive information with the wrong person, a foreign attaché, I believe. It was a mistake, not malice, but it nearly cost Henry his position. The matter was hushed up at great expense. Margaret never forgave herself." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "And this attaché, who was he?" Clara shook her head. "I don't know his name. Margaret rarely spoke of it. She said it was a youthful folly, best forgotten." "Yet someone has not forgotten," Poirot murmured. "This telegram, with its warning, 'Truth will out,' suggests the past has returned. Did you know of this telegram before her death?" Clara's gaze faltered. "No. She mentioned a letter, as I told you, but not a telegram. If she received one, she kept it from me." Poirot nodded, dismissing her with a polite bow. As she left, he turned to Hastings. "The scandal, it is the key. Someone used it to frighten Lady Margaret, perhaps to extort her. We must search further." They turned to Roger's room next, with Sir Henry's permission to examine the young man's belongings. The room was a study in disarray, clothes strewn across a chair, papers piled on a desk, and a faint smell of cigarette smoke lingering. Among the clutter, Poirot found a stack of unpaid bills, tailors, bookmakers, a jeweller, and a letter from a creditor, its tone sharp. "Payment is overdue, Mr. Hammond. Further delay will force us to take measures." Hastings whistled softly. "Roger's in deep, isn't he? Do you think he knew about this Vienna business? Could he have tried to use it to get money from his mother?" Poirot's expression was grave. "It is possible, Hastings. A desperate man may resort to desperate measures. Let us confront him." Roger was found in the billiard room, idly knocking balls across the green felt, his face a mask of frustration. When Poirot presented the creditor's letter, his bravado faltered. "Yes, I needed money," he admitted, his voice tight. "I asked Mother for help, and she refused. But I didn't know about any Vienna scandal, and I certainly didn't kill her." Poirot studied him, his grey eyes piercing. "Yet you argued with her, monsieur, the night she died. What did you say to her?" Roger ran a hand through his hair. "I told her I was in trouble, that I needed funds to start anew. She said I was reckless, that I'd squandered enough. I left her in the library, alive. That's the truth." Poirot nodded, his mind cataloguing every word. "We shall see, Monsieur Hammond. The truth, it has a way of revealing itself." As they returned to the library, Hastings whispered, "Poirot, this Vienna business, it's explosive. If someone was blackmailing her, it could be anyone in the house. Even Clara, she's cagey about it." Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "Clara knows more than she says, but so do others. The diary, the bills, the telegram, they form a pattern. We must find the thread that ties them to the murder." The mist outside thickened, and Greystone Manor seemed to close in, its secrets buried deep within its stone walls. Poirot stood by the desk, the diary open before him, his little grey cells working tirelessly to unravel the hidden past that had led to a deadly present. Chapter 6. The Night Visitor. The mist outside Greystone Manor had thickened into a dense fog by late afternoon, wrapping the estate in an eerie silence, broken only by the occasional drip of water from the eaves. Inside, the library remained a focal point of mystery, its heavy air laden with the weight of unspoken truths. Hercule Poirot stood near the fireplace, his gloved fingers tracing the edge of the mantel where the charred telegram fragment had been found. The words, "Truth will out," echoed in his mind, a cryptic warning that tied Lady Margaret Vane's death to a past she had desperately sought to conceal. Captain Arthur Hastings, restless as ever, paced near the desk, his eyes darting to the locked diary and the scattered papers, as if they might suddenly yield their secrets. "Poirot," Hastings said, pausing to face his friend. "This business with the Vienna scandal. It's serious, isn't it? Someone was threatening to expose Lady Margaret, and she burned that telegram to keep it quiet. But who knew enough to send it?" Poirot's grey eyes gleamed, his moustache twitching with the faintest hint of satisfaction. "Mon ami, you touch the heart of the matter. The telegram was no idle threat. It was a weapon, wielded by someone who knew Lady Margaret's deepest fears. But we have another clue to consider. The shadow in the garden, seen by Mrs. Finch. A visitor, cloaked, moving in the night. This, I believe, is the thread we must follow." Hastings frowned, his mind racing. "A visitor? At that hour? It's suspicious, Poirot. Could it be an outsider, someone from that Vienna business come to settle an old score?" Poirot shook his head slightly, his cane tapping the floor as he moved to the window overlooking the garden. "Possible, but unlikely. The windows were locked, the doors secure. This visitor, I suspect, was known to the household, or had means to enter unnoticed. We must learn more." He summoned Mrs. Finch, who appeared promptly, her grey hair slightly askew, her hands clutching her apron as if it were a lifeline. Her eyes, wide with unease, darted between Poirot and the darkening windows. "You wanted me, sir?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Oui, Mrs. Finch," Poirot said, his tone gentle but firm. "You spoke of a shadow in the garden last night, near the library windows. Tell me everything, every detail, no matter how small." Mrs. Finch swallowed, her fingers tightening. "It was just after I brought Lady Margaret her tea, sir, around 11:30. I was crossing the hall when I glanced out the window and saw someone, tall, cloaked, moving quickly along the garden path toward the library. I thought it odd, so late, but I didn't dare go out. I told myself it was nothing, but now—" Her voice faltered, and she dabbed her eyes with her handkerchief. Poirot leaned forward, his gaze piercing. "This figure, did you see their face? Any distinguishing mark?" Mrs. Finch shook her head. "No, sir. The fog was thick, and the cloak hid them. But they walked unevenly, like they favoured one leg." Hastings' eyes widened. "A limp! Poirot, that sounds like Dr. Kendrick. He's got that slight limp from his old injury. Could he have been out there?" Poirot raised a hand, silencing Hastings' enthusiasm. "Merci, Mrs. Finch. You have been most helpful. You may go." As the housekeeper hurried out, Poirot turned to Hastings, his expression thoughtful. "A limp, yes. It points to Kendrick. But we must not leap to conclusions. Many may walk unevenly in the dark, especially on wet ground. We must question the doctor." They found Dr. Paul Kendrick in the conservatory, tending to a tray of medicinal herbs. His calm demeanour unshaken despite the day's events. His dark hair was neatly combed, and his hands moved with the precision of a man accustomed to control. The slight limp was evident as he turned to face them, his expression polite but guarded. "Dr. Kendrick," Poirot began, his voice deceptively mild. "You visited Lady Margaret at midnight, you say, to check on her health. Yet Mrs. Finch saw a figure in the garden, near the library, just after 11:30, a tall figure, with a limp. Can you account for your movements?" Kendrick's eyebrow arched, but his composure held. "A figure in the garden? I assure you, Monsieur Poirot, I was not skulking about. I arrived at the manor around 11:45, entered through the front door, and went straight to the library to see Margaret. She was alive, as I told you, and I left shortly after midnight. I have no reason to wander in the garden." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "And yet the description fits. Your limp, doctor, it is distinctive. Did Lady Margaret speak of any visitors that night, or of the telegram that so distressed her?" Kendrick hesitated, his fingers brushing the leaves of a rosemary plant. "She mentioned no visitors. As for the telegram, she said nothing specific, only that she was troubled by a matter from her past. I didn't press her. It wasn't my place." Poirot nodded, his gaze unwavering. "Very well, doctor. But I advise you to recall every detail. The truth, it has a way of surfacing." As Kendrick left, Hastings whispered, "He's hiding something, Poirot. That limp, the timing, it's too close. And he was the last to see her alive." Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "Perhaps, Hastings, but the night visitor may not be the killer. The telegram, the Vienna scandal, the shadow, they are pieces of a puzzle, but not yet complete. We must dig deeper." They returned to the library, where Poirot examined the garden path visible through the window. The gravel was churned, but the fog and rain had blurred any footprints. He knelt, studying the ground, then rose with a thoughtful expression. "No clear marks, but the path is disturbed. Someone was here, Hastings. We must learn their purpose." The evening closed in, and the manor's atmosphere grew heavier, as if the fog had seeped into its very walls. Poirot stood by the desk, the diary open before him, its pages a silent testament to Lady Margaret's fears. "The night visitor," he murmured, "was no stranger. They came with intent, to warn, to threaten, or to kill. The little grey cells, they will find the answer. Hastings shivered, glancing at the dark windows. This place is giving me the creeps, Poirot. Whoever that visitor was, they're part of this. And I'd wager Kendrick knows more than he's letting on. Poirot's eyes gleamed with purpose. Patience, mon ami. The truth, it is like the fog. It obscures, but it will lift. And when it does, Hercule Poirot will be ready. Chapter 7. The Truth Unravelled. The fog that had cloaked Greystone Manor for days began to lift, revealing a sky of leaden grey as evening descended. In the drawing room, the air was thick with tension, the crackle of the fire doing little to warm the gathered company. Hercule Poirot stood at the centre, his small frame commanding the space with an authority born of intellect. His grey eyes, sharp and unyielding, swept over the household. Sir Henry Vane, slumped in an armchair, his grief etched in every line of his face. Clara Hammond, her posture rigid, her hands clasped as if to shield herself from scrutiny. Roger Hammond, pacing near the window, his restlessness a stark contrast to his aunt's stillness. Mrs. Finch, hovering by the door, her nervous fingers twisting her handkerchief, and Dr. Paul Kendrick, leaning against the mantel, his calm facade betraying a flicker of unease. Captain Arthur Hastings stood by Poirot's side, his heart pounding with anticipation, sensing the denouement was at hand. Mesdames et messieurs, Poirot began, his voice clear and resonant, we stand at the precipice of truth. Lady Margaret Vane was murdered in this house, strangled with her own scarf, her life taken to silence a secret. The telegram she received, truth will out, was the spark that ignited this tragedy. Tonight, I, Hercule Poirot, will reveal the killer. A murmur rippled through the room, but Poirot raised a hand, commanding silence. Let us reconstruct the night of the crime. Lady Margaret received a telegram that afternoon, a message that struck fear into her heart. She burned it, but not before its words left their mark. Why? Because it threatened to expose a scandal from her past, a betrayal in Vienna 20 years ago that nearly ruined Sir Henry's career. This secret she guarded fiercely, but someone sought to use it against her. He turned to Clara, his gaze piercing. Madam Hammond, you knew of this scandal, did you not? Your sister confided in you, and you feared its exposure would tarnish your family's name. Clara's eyes flashed, but her voice was steady. Yes, I knew. Margaret told me years ago. It was a foolish mistake, hushed up at great cost, but I had no part in her death. Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. I believe you, madame, but you played a role, however unwittingly. The telegram, you sent it, did you not? To warn your sister, to urge her to act before the truth came to light. Clara gasped, her hands rising to her throat. How did you? Yes, I sent it. I'd heard rumours, whispers that someone was digging into the past. I wanted Margaret to prepare, to protect Henry, but I didn't kill her. Poirot's gaze shifted to Roger, who froze mid-pace. Monsieur Hammond, your debts pressed heavily upon you. You quarrelled with your mother that night, demanding money she refused to give. Did you know of her secret? Did you seek to exploit it? Roger's face reddened, his hands clenching. I told you I knew nothing of Vienna. I needed funds, yes, but I didn't hurt her. I left her alive. Poirot turned to Mrs. Finch, who flinched under his scrutiny. And you, Mrs. Finch, saw a figure in the garden, a tall man, with a limp, moving toward the library. A vital clue, yet you hesitated to share it. Why? Mrs. Finch's voice trembled. I was afraid, sir. I didn't want to cause trouble. I thought maybe it was nothing. Poirot's eyes finally settled on Dr. Kendrick, whose calm demeanour faltered, his fingers tightening on the mantel. Doctor, you were the last to see Lady Margaret alive at midnight. You claim you checked her health, yet a figure matching your description was seen outside. You have a limp, monsieur, and a motive. Lady Margaret confided in you about her past. Did she not? You saw an opportunity to profit. Kendrick's jaw tightened, but his voice remained steady. You're mistaken, Monsieur Poirot. I was her physician, nothing more. I visited to ensure her well-being, and I left her alive. You have no proof otherwise. Poirot smiled, a cold, knowing smile. He produced the charred telegram fragment from his pocket, holding it aloft. This, Doctor, was traced to the village post office, where you were seen yesterday afternoon, shortly before the telegram was sent. A clerk remembers you. A man with a limp, posting a message. But it was not the telegram Clara sent, was it? You sent another, earlier, to frighten Lady Margaret into compliance. He paced, his cane tapping rhythmically. Here is what happened. Lady Margaret received your telegram, a threat to expose her Vienna scandal unless she paid you. She burned it, hoping to bury the truth. Clara, unaware of your actions, sent her own warning later that day, urging Margaret to act. That night, you visited the library, not as a doctor, but as a blackmailer. When Margaret refused to pay, you acted. You strangled her with her own scarf, overturning the chair in her struggle. You removed your sherry glass to obscure your presence, but you could not erase the truth. Kendrick's composure shattered, his face paling. This is preposterous. You can't prove any of this. Poirot's voice was unrelenting. The garden path, Doctor. It bears the mark of your uneven step, preserved in the damp gravel. The police have confirmed it. And the diary. Lady Margaret wrote of a trusted friend who betrayed her confidence. That friend was you. Kendrick lunged toward the door, but Hastings, quick, despite his surprise, blocked his path, grappling him to the floor. Sir Henry rose, his face a mask of anguish, while Clara and Roger stared, stunned. Mrs. Finch sobbed quietly, and the room seemed to hold its breath as Inspector Grayson, summoned earlier by Poirot, entered with 2 constables to take Kendrick away. As the doctor was led out, Poirot turned to the others. The truth, it has been unravelled. Lady Margaret died to protect her secret, but it was her trust that betrayed her. The telegram, it was the final spark, but the fire was lit long ago. The room fell silent, save for the crackle of the fire, as the weight of justice settled over Greystone Manor. Chapter 8. The Last Word. The morning sun broke through the lingering mist, casting a pale light over Greystone Manor as Hercule Poirot and Captain Arthur Hastings prepared to depart. The grand estate, once heavy with secrets, seemed quieter now, its stone facade softened by the dawn. In the hall, their bags stood ready, packed by the ever-efficient Jenkins, while Sir Henry Vane awaited them, his face etched with a weary gratitude. The events of the previous night, the unmasking of Dr. Paul Kendrick as Lady Margaret's killer, had left the household subdued, as if the manor itself exhaled a sigh of relief. Poirot adjusted his hat, his movements precise, his grey eyes reflecting a quiet satisfaction. The charred fragment of the telegram, "Truth will out," rested in an envelope in his pocket, a memento of a case solved through the relentless work of his little grey cells. Hastings, standing beside him, shifted his weight, his mind still turning over the dramatic confrontation in the drawing room. "Poirot," Hastings said, his voice low, "it's a grim business, isn't it? All this because of a mistake from 20 years ago. If Lady Margaret hadn't carried that guilt, perhaps she'd still be alive." Poirot's moustache twitched, a faint smile playing at his lips. "Mon ami, the past is a shadow that follows us all. For Lady Margaret, it was a shadow she could not escape. The telegram was her final warning, a cry from the past that sealed her fate. Yet, through it, Hercule Poirot has brought justice." Sir Henry approached, his hands clasped tightly. "Monsieur Poirot, I cannot thank you enough. Margaret's death, it's a wound that will never fully heal, but knowing her killer is caught brings some peace. How did you see through Kendrick's facade?" Poirot inclined his head, his tone measured. The truth, Sir Henry, lies in the details. The telegram, sent from the village post office where Kendrick was seen, the marks of his limp in the garden path, the diary's hint of a trusted friend's betrayal. These were the threads I wove together. Kendrick believed his calm would shield him, but the little grey cells, they do not falter. Hastings nodded, his admiration evident. And Clara's telegram, imagine if she hadn't sent it. It might have muddied the waters, but it helped you see the pattern. Oui, Poirot agreed, his eyes distant. Clara's warning, though well-intentioned, was the spark that pushed Kendrick to act. He feared Lady Margaret would reveal his blackmail, and so he silenced her. A tragic chain, set in motion by a single secret. Sir Henry's voice was hoarse. Margaret carried that Vienna affair like a burden. I thought it buried, but I should have known better. Secrets never stay hidden. Poirot's gaze softened. The past, it is a relentless pursuer. But you, Sir Henry, must now look to the future. Your wife's memory deserves peace. As they stepped into the waiting Rolls-Royce, Hastings glanced back at the manor, its turrets piercing the morning sky. It's a grand old place, but I shan't be sorry to leave it. Too many ghosts. Poirot chuckled softly. Ghosts, Hastings, are merely the echoes of truth. We have laid this one to rest. The car wound through the Devon lanes, carrying them back to the train station and the bustle of London. In his flat that evening, Poirot placed the telegram fragment in a small lacquered box alongside mementos of other cases, a relic of a dying art and a deadly truth. He sipped his tisane, his mind already turning to the next puzzle, while Hastings, sprawled in an armchair, marvelled at the quiet brilliance of his friend. The last telegram, Hastings mused. But not the last mystery, eh, Poirot? Poirot's eyes twinkled. Never, mon ami. As long as there are secrets, there will be work for Hercule Poirot.